Galactic Council ignored Earth's diplomats' warning until their fleet was erased in seconds, HFY. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in laughter, until Earth's ambassador leaned forward, voice calm yet final. If you send your fleet to Sol, they will not return. The chamber of the Galactic Council was an architectural marvel, vast, luminous, filled with the voices of hundreds of species. Today, those voices roared with laughter. Marcus Hale, Earth's appointed ambassador, stood at the center of it all, calm and composed. He had been mocked before. He had been ignored. But he had never been laughed at. Still, he did not flinch. If you send your fleet to Sol, he said evenly, his voice carrying over the jeering crowd, they will not return. Another wave of laughter erupted, some representatives shaking their heads in amusement, others outright sneering. Counselor Seraxis, a towering reptilian from the Vorthal Dominion, leaned forward, smirking. Oh? And what will your kind do, Ambassador? Hurl primitive nuclear warheads at our armada? The laughter grew. Hale did not react. Supreme Admiral Veltrax of the Dracian Dominion, clad in ceremonial war armor, rose from his seat, his golden eyes gleaming with mirth. The sheer arrogance of humans never ceases to amaze me. He turned, addressing the entire assembly. They stand here, a species barely 2 centuries into space travel, daring to challenge the might of the Council? How amusing! His statement was met with applause. Hale finally moved, placing a small data chip onto the podium. With a single touch, a holographic projection flickered to life. Detailed strategic reports, fleet movements, projections of engagement scenarios. You see, Admiral, Hale continued, undeterred, we are well aware of your fleet. Its strength, its composition, its weaknesses. We know you outnumber us. We know your technology has centuries on ours. He paused. And yet, we do not fear you. The laughter faded slightly, replaced by a murmur of curiosity. Veltrax scoffed. A bluff. You expect us to believe you have some secret weapon that can stop us? Hale smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. I expect you to believe whatever you wish. A silence settled over the chamber. A silence thick with something the Council had never associated with humanity before. Doubt. Counselor Bellows of the Zalari Confederacy, an elder species known for its cautious diplomacy, watched Hale closely. You speak as if Earth is already prepared for war. We are not, Hale said simply. But we are prepared to end one. A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. Even the most war-hardened species in the room could not ignore the certainty in the human's voice. Veltrax was unmoved. Then let us put this to the test. He turned to the Council. I motion for an immediate deployment of forces. 1,000 warships directly to the Sol system. Let humanity's so-called confidence be measured in battle. There was no debate, no hesitation. The vote was unanimous. Hale exhaled, shaking his head. You were warned, he said. Then he turned and walked out, leaving the Council chamber echoing with its own impending doom. The Galactic Council wasted no time. Within hours, the order was given. 1,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled against a single world, set course for Sol. Admiral Veltrax stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, surveying the fleet's departure. Hundreds of vessels shimmered as they entered FTL, their movements precise, disciplined. He felt no tension, no concern. This wasn't a war. It was a lesson. Reports flooded in from various news networks. The Zalari Broadcast Collective labeled the campaign a necessary correction to human arrogance. The Dracian War Chronicle predicted total surrender within hours of arrival. Across the galaxy, civilizations watched in anticipation, eager to see the upstarts crushed. As the fleet traveled, Veltrax entertained messages from diplomats and generals, all offering congratulations in advance. He dismissed them with little more than a nod. This was no achievement. It was an inevitability. The fleet emerged at the outer edges of the Sol system. The gas giant Neptune loomed ahead, its rings casting long shadows across space. The battle would not take place here, but the sight of an untouched system, undefended, unprepared, only reinforced Veltrax's belief. "Scan for enemy vessels," he ordered. A pause. Then confusion. "No enemy vessels detected," his sensor officer reported. Veltrax frowned. "Impossible. Earth's fleet should be at the very least mobilizing." "They're not here, Admiral. No formations. No orbital defenses detected. Nothing." The bridge fell silent. Whispers of disbelief rippled through the crew. Across the fleet, commanders received similar reports. No resistance. No sign of movement. Veltrax allowed himself a chuckle. "They've already surrendered. The fools didn't even try." A junior officer hesitated. "Admiral, if I may, why haven't they responded at all? Even a retreat would make sense." "This is strange." Veltrax ignored him. "Proceed toward Earth," he commanded. "Announce our arrival. I want a direct channel to their government." A transmission was sent across open frequencies, ensuring that the whole of humanity would hear his words. "This is Supreme Admiral Veltrax of the Dracian Dominion. By the authority of the Galactic Council, Earth is now under our jurisdiction. Surrender your fleets, your orbital platforms, and your leaders immediately. You will not receive a second offer." Minutes passed. No response. "Send it again," he ordered. Another minute. Silence. His claws tightened against the command console. "What are they doing?" A single ping interrupted the stillness. A transmission. Not from Earth, not from any known fleet, but from an unidentified outpost somewhere in the system. It contained only 4 words. "Engagement Protocol Omega confirmed." Then, nothing. Veltrax leaned forward, scowling. Where did that come from? His communications officer worked frantically. Unknown. The signal was relayed through multiple satellites. No direct origin point. Veltrax exhaled through gritted teeth. Then find it. His second-in-command stepped closer. "Admiral, perhaps we should." The ship trembled. Not from an explosion. Not from impact. But something far, far worse. Across the fleet, ships vanished. Panic gripped the fleet. One moment, 1,000 warships stood in formation. The next, entire sections of the armada simply ceased to exist. No explosions, no debris. Just the cold, empty void where once stood vessels of war. Veltrax's eyes widened. The command deck of the Dominion's Wrath erupted in chaos. Officers shouted over one another, desperate for answers, but none came. "Report," Veltrax bellowed. The sensor officer's voice shook. "Admiral, we've lost." He stopped, staring at his screen. "By the stars. 20 dreadnoughts gone. Hundreds of cruisers. No energy signatures. No weapons fire detected." Veltrax's claws dug into his console. This wasn't possible. A shriek came through the comms, the last transmission of a ship moments before it disappeared. The feed cut out abruptly. More warships vanished, one after another, like some unseen force was erasing them from existence. The fleet's once flawless formation splintered. Panic took hold. Some ships broke ranks, attempting emergency jump. It made no difference. They vanished mid-maneuver. "Find out what's hitting us!" Veltrax roared. "Admiral, we don't." The weapons officer started before stopping cold. His screen flickered with a single line of text, relayed from the fleet's dying vessels. "Firing solution locked." It came from every direction at once. A flash. Not light, but the absence of it. The space where his escort ships had been became nothing. Veltrax staggered back. "What is this?" The intelligence officer paled. "Sir, it's kinetic. Some kind of high-velocity impact. No energy readings, no warning, just—" He swallowed. "Instant annihilation." Veltrax froze. A memory surfaced, one he had mocked in the council chambers. The human diplomat's words. "If you send your warships to Sol, they will not return." His breath hitched. They hadn't lied. This wasn't a bluff. It had never been a bluff. He turned to his navigation officer. Reverse course. Get us out of darkness. The silence was absolute. Where a mighty armada once stood, now there was nothing. No wreckage, no distress signals, just the void swallowing everything. The few remaining warships floated, frozen in place, their crews too terrified to act. A transmission cut through the silence, originating from the outer edges of the Sol system. Engagement complete. Target neutralized. The words carried no emotion, no triumph, just cold efficiency. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Veltrax's flagship no longer existed. Neither did he. The highest-ranking officers of the fleet had been among the first to vanish. Those who remained could barely process what had happened. No enemies had been seen. No weapons had been fired in retaliation. And yet, the battle was already over. Across the remaining fleet, officers stared at their screens, waiting for orders that would never come. Communications officers attempted to re-establish contact with command, but there was no one left to answer. On the bridge of the Vornax Spear, Captain Relek sat frozen, his gnarled hands clenched so tightly around the arms of his command chair that the fabric tore beneath his grip. His second-in-command turned to him, voice trembling. "What do we do?" Relek didn't answer. He couldn't. The sensor officer whispered, "Captain, it's Earth. It has to be. This is their doing." The words sent a chill through the entire bridge. The Galactic Council had dismissed Earth as a primitive world, barely worth the attention of the great empires. Yet, in a matter of seconds, they had erased 1,000 warships, one of the largest fleets ever assembled. Someone whispered, "What are they?" Relek exhaled shakily. "They're monsters." The tactical officer flinched. "Captain, should we retreat?" A long pause. Then, the ship's main screen flickered. A new transmission came through, overriding all frequencies. A voice, calm and human. "This is Earth." The crew held their breath. "You have violated our sovereignty. You have ignored our warnings. This was the consequence of your arrogance." The remaining ships trembled in space, their commanders too afraid to even power their engines. The voice continued, unwavering. "This is your only warning. If you come again, we will not stop at your fleet. We will not stop at your empire." Silence. Then, one last message. "Leave." The transmission ended. The threat was over. And yet, the terror had only just begun. The broadcast from Earth spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Every major news outlet, every communications network, and every fleet command center within 1,000 light-years received the chilling message. It was simple, direct, and unmistakable. Earth had obliterated the Galactic Council's armada, and it was not afraid to do it again. The first response came from the Caranthian League, a powerful conglomerate of interstellar trade unions and military alliances. A fleet had been on the move toward Sol, tasked with securing resources from nearby colonies. They halted in mid-flight, receiving the broadcast with a mix of disbelief and awe. On the bridge of the Caranthian Dread, Admiral Phelan stared at the screen, his brow furrowed. "This cannot be real," he muttered. "It's impossible." His first officer hesitated, then spoke. "Sir, Earth's defenses are unlike anything we've encountered. The fleet was destroyed with no sign of resistance." "We cannot ignore this," Phelan replied, his voice hardening. "We must reconsider our plans." But there was no time for hesitation. The Trevani Dominion, the most powerful military force in the quadrant, had already issued a statement. They were pulling all military assets back from Earth's borders. They had never feared a species like this. The idea of an underdeveloped world like Earth erasing an entire fleet was not something they could simply dismiss. The panic spread to every corner of the galaxy, infecting even the most advanced species. Political alliances began to fracture, as every empire now faced the harsh reality that Earth was a force to be reckoned with. The Galactic Council, however, found itself in turmoil. In the span of mere hours, Earth had proven itself to be far more capable than they had ever imagined. The arrogant dismissal of humanity's potential, long held by the Council, had cost them dearly. Thousands of years of political dominance had crumbled in an instant. In the shadowed halls of the Council's headquarters, the leaders of the most influential species sat in stunned silence. The leader of the Dracian Dominion, Veltrax's once loyal advisor, stood up first, his voice trembling. We miscalculated." A murmur rippled through the room. No one dared to meet his gaze. They had underestimated humanity, but more than that, they had ignored the warning. "What do we do?" one of the council members asked. Her voice shook with fear. The counselor from the Nervith Federation, a quiet but calculating figure, spoke next. "We offer peace." "No," another voice interjected. "We will not surrender to humanity. Our fleets, they've been humiliated." The debate raged on, but a single thought loomed over all of them. Earth had shown that it could and would erase them if provoked again. The Council was no longer in control. They had to act fast, or risk their own annihilation. Meanwhile, on Earth, the message was clear. Humanity would not be cowed, and its strength would no longer be underestimated. The diplomats in Earth's United Nations headquarters stood at attention as the Council scrambled to react. Marcus Hale, the man who had issued the original warning, sat quietly. He knew the job wasn't done. This was merely the first victory in a much larger conflict. He looked out the window at the blue and green planet beneath him and felt something stirring within him. A sense of vindication, yes, but also a quiet, unsettling truth. The rest of the galaxy would come to understand what Earth had become, what humanity had evolved into. The old alliances would fracture, and the political machinations would begin anew. But now, humanity was the one who held the power, the one who made the demands. They would not stop at a single victory. As Marcus Hale exhaled slowly, he realized the implications of what had just happened. The universe would never see Earth the same way again. The next message to the Galactic Council might not come in the form of a warning. Instead, it would be a declaration, one that Earth's enemies would have no choice but to heed. The galaxy had just learned the hard way that humanity never bluffs. The galaxy had not yet recovered from the shockwave of Earth's actions. The aftermath of the destruction of the Galactic Council's fleet left a tangible fear hanging in the air, one that even the most hardened diplomats and military commanders couldn't shake. Earth was no longer a backwater planet, a species to be ignored or dismissed. It had made its point with brutal efficiency. In the days that followed, communication channels across the galaxy were flooded with urgent debates, but most were centered around one question: what now? The Council, weakened by the sudden destruction of its armada, issued an emergency meeting. The leaders of the most influential galactic factions were summoned to respond to humanity's rise. Across the various systems, ambassadors and fleet commanders gathered, uncertain of what to do next. They had failed to grasp the sheer power Earth wielded, and now there was no going back. The Council had long relied on political manipulation and the overwhelming force of its fleets to maintain control over the galaxy. But now, the balance had shifted. Earth had proven that it could and would destroy an entire fleet in the blink of an eye, and that realization had shattered the sense of invincibility many empires had grown accustomed to. On the far edge of the galaxy, the Zypherian Collective, a race known for their technological advancements, called for an immediate response to Earth's new position. They were vocal in their condemnation of the Galactic Council's failure and called for a complete restructuring of galactic governance, one that would bring Earth into the fold under their terms. They feared the consequences of allowing a world so powerful to exist outside their control. Meanwhile, the Kovari Empire, known for its brutal, militaristic approach to expansion, saw Earth's actions as a direct challenge to their authority. They quickly sent a delegation to the Galactic Council, demanding that Earth be brought to heel before their influence could spread further. But their demands were met with cold silence. Humanity had outplayed them all. The very thing they had feared had come to pass. The underdog had defeated the Titans. Earth was no longer just a planet of curious species. It was now a galactic superpower. Back on Earth, Marcus Hale sat in a conference room filled with high-ranking officials, advisors, and military leaders. He had issued his warning, and it had been heeded. But that wasn't the end of it. There were new challenges ahead, new questions to answer. A young officer, eager but cautious, spoke up. "Ambassador Hale, how do we move forward? The Council may be scrambling, but they'll regroup. We've shown them our strength, but will they really leave us alone?" Hale's gaze hardened, his fingers tapping lightly on the table in thought. "We've given them a choice. They can leave us be, or they can test us again. But I believe they've learned their lesson." He paused for a moment before continuing, his voice steady. "And if they haven't, we'll remind them. We won't make the same mistake they did. We won't underestimate them. But what about the others? The empires, the trade unions? The other galactic factions?" the officer asked. "We'll have to handle them one at a time," Hale replied, his tone unwavering. "But make no mistake, Earth won't back down. We've shown them our strength, and now we'll show them our resolve. We'll turn this into something more than just a response. We'll become a force no one can ignore, a power no one can challenge." There was a quiet understanding in the room. No one spoke for a moment, but the weight of Hale's words hung in the air. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but they had emerged victorious. And now, they would stand at the center of a galaxy that had underestimated them. Their future, their place in the stars, would no longer be decided by others. As the meeting came to an end, Hale stood, his eyes scanning the faces around him. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson, and now Earth had to decide how to use that knowledge. The next steps would not be easy, but they would be necessary. It was no longer about survival. It was about making sure the galaxy understood what it meant to face humanity. For the first time in a long while, Marcus Hale felt something akin to hope. Humanity had proven itself. They were no longer just another species in the vast expanse of space. They had become the species, the one everyone would have to reckon with. And as the doors to the conference room slid open, he stepped forward, knowing that the real work was just beginning. The galaxy had been forever changed, and Earth was now at the forefront of that change.